Now that you have taped and glued page 42 on your notebook, I want you to go to your very next blank page and label it as page 43 with this title. Now the I can statements look the same, but there's one difference. So if you will pause your video, label page 43. Now that you've labeled page 43, you can read that the I can statement says I can evaluate or give the value of expressions with the exponent of 0. So we're going to take what we reviewed from page 42 using exponents, evaluating expressions using exponents, but as we go through this, we're going to concentrate on the exponent of 0. Hopefully you have received the handout already from the substitute, and you'll notice that your handout consists of 3 tables. We're going to complete some of this table together. So if you will look, our first table deals with a base of 4. We have 4 to the 4th power, 4 to the 3rd power, 4 to the 2nd, 4 to the 1st, and so on. So we're going to take this base and exponent and we're going to write it in expanded form, which means to show what we will multiply. And then we're going to calculate. We don't need a calculator. We can do this by hand. We're going to calculate the value or the standard form. Again, if at any time during the video you need to pause it, then make sure that you do that. The goal is for you to complete this notebook page. Okay, so 4 to the 4th power, remember the exponent 4 tells us to take that base and multiply it by itself 4 times. So if you will pause your video and write out 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. Okay, now let's do the math. Well, 4 times 4 is 16. When I multiply this 4 times 4, I get 16. And now I need to go back and multiply 16 times 16. If you will pause your video and out to the side, do your multiplication for 16 times 16. Pause your video now. Okay, when you multiplied 16 times 16, you should have gotten 256. If you did not, I want you to go back now and redo your multiplication. If you need to pause your video to do that, feel free. Okay, now let's go to the next row, which is 4 to the 3rd power, or 4 cubed. Make sure you're saying that, 4 cubed. When you have an exponent of 3, you can also say cubed. This tells me to take my base of 4 and multiply it by itself 3 times. So if you will pause your video and do the math and write your standard form there. You should have gotten 64 for the standard form. If not, go back and check your multiplication. Okay, now let's look at 4 squared, or 4 to the 2nd power. That means 4 times 4, and when you do the math, the standard form is 16. Then we see 4 to the 1st power, which simply means just 1 4. And the value of that is 4. That is a review of what we were doing on the previous page of our notebook. Okay, now what I want us to do is we're going to take each one of these standard form answers and we're going to divide it by the base, and the base we've been dealing with is 4. So pause your video and write this down. Okay, if we take 256 and divide it by 4, we get an answer. So what I want you to do right now is pause your video and do the division. 256 divided by 4. Do that right now. Okay, you should have gotten 64 for your division, and what I want you to notice about this is that 64 is the answer underneath where we began. Now let's take 64 and divide it by the base of 4, because after all, the opposite of multiplying is what? Dividing. Well, with exponents, we use multiplication. So if I'm going backwards, then I'm going to do the opposite of multiplying, which is dividing. That is why I am dividing by this base of 4. So pause your video and divide 64 by 4. You should have gotten 16, which is this answer beneath. You should be drawing these arrows just like I am. If we continue that process, 16 divided by 4 would give us this answer, which is 4. Make sure you're labeling and completing your notebook page just like I am. And then if we take 4 and divide it by 4, we would get the answer to the problem below. So think, what is 4 divided by 4? It is not 0. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So continuing in this same pattern that we've been working on, dividing by 4, we see that 4 to the 0 power is equal to 1. Now there's really nothing that we can put in this expanded form because it's just 1. Okay, look at your next table. In your next table, your base is a 5. And I want you're going to pause your video in just a moment, and I want you to fill in the expanded form and the standard form for 5 to the 4th power, 5 to the 3rd power, 5 to the 2nd power, and 5 to the 1st. You may not use a calculator. Do your multiplication by hand. So pause your video and complete those 4 rows. Okay, you're going to check your work. You should have written 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, and after you did all of that multiplying, this is 25. 5 times 5 is 25, and when you multiply 25 times 25, you should have gotten 625. If you did not get that, go back and redo your multiplication. Okay, for 5 to the 3rd power, you should have written 5 times itself 3 times. And when you evaluated that, you should have 125. Again, if you didn't get that, go back and redo your multiplication. 5 to the 2nd means 5 times 5, which is 25. And 5 to the 1st means 5, and the value is 5. Okay, now that we have our standard forms, we're going to take each one of these and divide by the base, just like we did in the previous table. The base that we're working with is 5. So right now, pause your video and do this division. You should have gotten 125, which is the answer below. Now, if we take 125 and divide it by 5, and again, you should be writing this on your own notebook page, pausing the video as needed. But when you take 125 and divide it by 5, you're going to get this answer, which is 25. Continuing that process, 25 divided by 5 is 5, and 5 divided by 5 is not 0. What's 5 divided by 5? 1. So 4 to the 0 power was equal to 1. And now 5 to the 0 power is equal to 1. You should be catching on to powers of 0. Now that we've done the first 2 tables together, I want you to complete the entire last table on your own. Pause your video and complete this table. Okay, you should have done all of the work for the last table, and now you're going to check your work and make any corrections that you might need to. 3 to the 4th power in expanded form looks like that. And when you did the multiplication, you should have done 9 times 9, which is 81. 3 cubed, or 3 to the 3rd power, is 27. 3 squared, or 3 to the 2nd power, you should have gotten 9. And 3 to the 1st power is 3. Hopefully you remember us dividing by the base, and when you do that each time, you should have gotten the answer below, which means 3 divided by 3 is 1. So we found out that 4 to the 0 power is equal to 1, 5 to the 0 power was equal to 1 by dividing by the base, and now we see that 3 to the 0 power is equal to 1. So based on these three tables, I want you to fill in the answer to this statement. Pause your video and fill in your answer. Based on the tables above, what is any number to the 0 power equal to? Hopefully you put 1 in that blank. Any number to the 0 power. Think of the biggest number that you can. 20,564,000 to the 0 power is going to be equal to 1. So this completes page 43 of your notebook. Make sure that it's complete and that you corrected any that you missed. Now you're going to fold and tape or glue this onto page 43. Once you do that, that completes the notebook pages that you're going to do today. Then you will go on to your next assignment in Google Classroom, which I believe was your Ed puzzle. I will see you tomorrow.